The loneliness you feel is not what you think it is. That aching void inside your chest, that silence that echoes through your days like footsteps in an empty cathedral. You have been taught to call it isolation, abandonment, the cruel indifference of existence. But this is the first lie, the deepest lie, the most devastating deception ever whispered into the human heart. Your loneliness is not the absence of connection. It is the presence of something far more profound. It is the universe pulling back the curtain on every false relationship, every hollow conversation, every connection that fed on your emptiness rather than your fullness. The cosmos is not punishing you with solitude. It is liberating you from the illusion that you needed saving. What you call abandonment is actually recalibration. What you call isolation is actually initiation. The silence you fear is not the sound of being forgotten. It is the sound of being prepared. Every moment of apparent rejection is actually a moment of cosmic protection, shielding you from connections that would diminish rather than amplify your essential nature. The universe is not leaving you alone, it is leaving you whole. It is stripping away every relationship, every distraction, every external validation that kept you from discovering the inexhaustible richness that lives within your own being. This loneliness is not emptiness. It is fullness in disguise, waiting to be recognized. From the moment you drew your first breath, they taught you that love meant dependence. That connection required the surrender of your center. They whispered in your ear through lullabies and lessons, through fairy tales and cultural conditioning. You are incomplete alone. You are broken without others. Your worth is measured by how desperately you are needed, how completely you can disappear into another's shadow. So you learn to make yourself small. You learn to hunger for validation like a dying plant reaching toward any light, even artificial light, even the cold glow of screens that promise connection, but deliver only the echo of your own longing. You confused attachment with love, neediness with intimacy, the fear of abandonment with the capacity for devotion. Every relationship became a negotiation with your own emptiness. Every friendship, a transaction where you traded pieces of your authentic self for the temporary relief of not being alone. You became addicted to the drug of external validation, and like all addicts, you found that the medicine that once healed began to poison. The very connections you sought to fill the void within you began to create deeper voids, more desperate needs, more frantic searching. You learned to perform your personality rather than inhabit it. You learned to offer what others wanted rather than what you authentically had to give. You became a master of emotional contortion, twisting yourself into shapes that would guarantee you would not be left alone, not recognizing that in this twisting, you were leaving yourself, abandoning the very self that others might have truly loved. The pain you feel now, the crushing weight of solitude, the echo of unanswered calls, the silence where laughter used to live, is not the pain of being unloved. It is the pain of detoxification. Your soul is withdrawing from the false nourishment it has been feeding on for years, perhaps decades. The ache in your chest is not emptiness. It is space being cleared for something infinitely more nourishing. Think of how an addict's body rebels when the poison is finally removed. The shaking, the sweating, the desperate craving for what was slowly killing them. Your loneliness is this same rebellion, but on the level of the soul. Every text you want to send but don't, every call you want to make but resist, every social media scroll you avoid. These are moments of choosing recovery over relapse, choosing authentic solitude over artificial connection. The withdrawal symptoms are real. The phantom vibrations of phones that never ring, the muscle memory of reaching for validation that isn't there, the cold sweats of realizing how much of your identity was built on others' opinions of you. But like all detoxification, this pain is productive. It is the pain of healing, not the pain of damage. It is the discomfort of returning to your natural state after living so long in an unnatural one. This apparent abandonment by others is actually your soul's rebellion against abandoning yourself. The universe has stepped in to stop the hemorrhaging of your authentic essence through relationships that required you to be less than you are, in order to be loved. Every person who has walked away was unconsciously serving this higher purpose. clearing the stage so that your true self could finally take center spotlight without having to share it with the performed versions of yourself that others preferred. There exists an ancient understanding, whispered by mystics and buried beneath centuries of social conditioning. The human soul is not fundamentally relational. It is fundamentally whole. Connection is not the medicine for existential incompleteness. It is the overflow of existential abundance. This truth has been hidden from you by a culture that profits from your sense of inadequacy, that builds entire industries on your belief that you are broken and need fixing through consumption, through validation, through the constant acquisition of external approval. This is the paradox that modern consciousness cannot grasp. Only when you cease needing others can you truly love them. Only when you stop using relationships to fill the void can you offer relationships the fullness of your being. The universe operates on this principle. The sun does not shine because it is lonely, but because it cannot contain its own light. The ocean does not call to the shore because it needs validation, but because its nature is to touch everything with its depth. Your solitude is not a punishment for some cosmic inadequacy. It is the universe's way of returning you to your original wholeness, the completeness that existed before you learned to fragment yourself in pursuit of approval. Every moment of loneliness is actually a moment of remembering the self that needs no external validation to know its own worth, the self that existed before you were taught to doubt your inherent magnificence. The cosmos does not create broken beings who require fixing through connection. It creates complete beings who have forgotten their completeness through the hypnosis of social need, through the collective trance that convinces billions of whole souls that they are half beings searching for their other half. Your loneliness is the alarm clock waking you from this collective dream of inadequacy, but this remembering is not comfortable. To remember your wholeness, you must first feel the full weight of how completely you forgot it. To reclaim your center, you must first experience the dizziness of having lived so long off-center. The universe's method of recentering you is not gentle. It is precise, surgical, unavoidable. There is a different kind of love emerging in you now. Not the desperate love that grasps and clings, but the solar love that radiates without expecting anything in return. This love does not arise from emptiness seeking fulfillment, but from fullness seeking expression. It is the love of the mountain that stands magnificent in solitude, of the ocean that is complete whether observed or unseen, of the star that burns bright in the vast darkness not because it needs witnesses but because burning bright is its nature. This is the love that the universe is teaching you through your apparent isolation. As you learn to be whole in your own company, as you discover the inexhaustible richness of your inner landscape, the conversations you can have with your own depth, the adventures you can take in the territory of your own imagination, the peace you can find in the sanctuary of your own being, you become capable of offering others something that most never experience: presence without neediness, affection without attachment, companionship without the desperate requirement that they complete you. The loneliness you feel is actually the birth pangs of this new capacity. Each moment of solitude is strengthening your ability to love from abundance rather than scarcity. You are being taught the difference between connection that diminishes and connection that amplifies, between relationships that drain your battery and relationships that charge it, between love that takes and love that gives because it cannot help but give. From this new center, your very presence becomes a gift. You stop being someone who needs saving and become someone whose company is inherently nourishing. You stop bringing your hunger to every interaction and start bringing your feast. Others begin to feel in your presence what it might be like to be whole, not because you tell them, but because you embody the possibility. Your solitude is not preparing you to be alone forever. It is preparing you to be authentically together, without the desperate compromise that characterizes most human connection. It is teaching you to love without losing yourself, to connect without disappearing, to be intimate without being dependent. This new way of loving extends beyond romantic relationships, beyond friendships, beyond family dynamics. It transforms how you relate to your work, to your creative expression, to your relationship with life itself. You begin to create not because you need validation, but because creation flows naturally from your abundance. You begin to contribute not because you need to prove your worth, but because contribution is the natural expression of a fulfilled being. Watch how this changes everything. Your art becomes more honest because it no longer needs to please anyone but the creative force moving through you. Your work becomes more effective because it no longer carries the desperate energy of someone trying to prove their value. Your conversations become more nourishing because you speak from authentic interest rather than the need to be interesting. Your presence becomes magnetic not because you're trying to attract anyone, but because wholeness naturally draws others toward it. This is the paradox of the recentered life. The less you need from others, the more they want to give to you. The less you perform your worth, the more valuable you become. The less you chase connection, the more authentic connections find their way to you. You become like a well in the desert, not desperately calling out to travelers, but simply being so deep and pure that those who need nourishment are naturally drawn to what you offer. The universe orchestrated your loneliness to teach you this ancient secret, that love given from emptiness depletes both giver and receiver, but love given from fullness nourishes endlessly without ever running dry. You are pulled away from lesser love so that you could discover the love that needs no reciprocation to remain whole, no acknowledgement to remain generous, no guarantee to remain open. But even this newfound wholeness, this solar love, this capacity for authentic connection, even this must eventually be released. The universe that is recentering you will one day ask you to let go of even your most beautiful discoveries about yourself and others, even the identity of being whole, of being someone who loves from abundance, of being recentered by cosmic wisdom. Even this must be held lightly. There comes a time when the soul must retreat into an even deeper silence, beyond the need to love or be loved, beyond the identity of being whole or broken, beyond even the beautiful story of being recentered by the cosmos. This is the silence that exists before words, before needs, before relationships, before the very concept of alone or together. This is the silence from which all identities emerge and to which they return. In this ultimate solitude, you discover something that transcends both loneliness and connection. The vast stillness from which all relationships emerge and to which they return. Here, the question of whether you are alone becomes meaningless because the very one who could be alone has dissolved into something infinitely larger. The boundaries between self and other, between inner and outer, between the one who loves and the one who is loved, begin to soften and eventually disappear entirely. This is not a philosophical concept, but a lived reality that awaits everyone who follows their loneliness deep enough. In the deepest chamber of solitude, you find not yourself but the source of all selves. You find not connection, but the source from which all connections arise. You find not love, but the source from which all love flows. This is the final gift of your apparent abandonment, not just the discovery of wholeness, not just the capacity for authentic love, not just the ability to be alone without being lonely, but the recognition that even these discoveries are temporary costumes worn by something that needs no costume at all. The universe recenters you not just to heal your loneliness, but to show you the source from which both loneliness and connection arise. In this deepest silence, you realize that you were never alone, because there was never truly a separate you to be alone. The loneliness you felt was the universe's way of calling you home to this recognition, of dissolving the illusion of separation that created the possibility of loneliness in the first place. Even this understanding must eventually be released. Even the one who understands must eventually disappear into the understanding itself. This is the ultimate maturity, knowing when to let go of even your most profound realizations, when to surrender even your most beautiful identities, when to disappear into the silence that gave birth to everything you thought you were. If these words have touched something true in you, if you recognize the cosmic recentering happening in your own apparent solitude, if you feel the stirring of a love that needs no object and a wholeness that requires no completion, write this simple commitment in the comments. I trust the universe's plan for my wholeness. Let this be your declaration that you will no longer resist the holy loneliness that is actually preparing you for sacred connection. Let it be your promise to yourself that you will use this time of apparent isolation to discover the inexhaustible, richness that you are, rather than the endless neediness you thought you were. Let it be your commitment to stop running from the silence and start listening to what it has to teach you. Let this be your acknowledgement that what looks like abandonment is actually the most intimate form of cosmic care, that what feels like rejection is actually protection, that what appears to be isolation is actually initiation into a way of being that most humans never discover. The path of authentic connection begins in the garden of solitude. The deepest love grows in the soil of self-completeness. The most nourishing relationships emerge from two whole beings, choosing to share their abundance rather than two half-beings, desperately trying to complete each other. The universe knows this. Your soul knows this. The deepest part of you has always known this. Now you are ready to live from this knowing. Continue exploring these depths. Continue trusting the process that appears to isolate you but is actually integrating you. Continue believing that what looks like abandonment is actually preparation for a kind of love so authentic, so abundant, so free from need that it transforms everyone it touches. The silence that surrounds you is not empty. It is pregnant with possibilities you cannot yet imagine. The loneliness that grips you is not permanent. It is the temporary cocoon from which your authentic self is emerging. The solitude that frightens you is not punishment. It is preparation for a life so full, so connected, so deeply rooted in your own wholeness, that you will look back on this time of apparent isolation as the greatest gift the universe ever gave you.